Gather.
Good. And can you close the door? All right, so recording this for the community to give this a watch as well. Um, Community, if you're watching this is just a casual session for us to discuss some of the initial like redesigns for the main app. We had already planned to do this before going into mainnet, but since you all got really want to see it earlier, we're accelerating it. Next to me is Zero X Robbie as well, who's working on some research.
Hey guys.
So for Tucker, I'm not sure the best way to structure this. I still want to leave this in the end up to you, of course, Tucker, design wise. So I kind of wanted us to at least expend, I don't know, half an hour to just discuss kind of like style wise what we like, what I had in mind, what I think we should have like items for before we start redesigning. Um,
Sure.
one thing that I'm noticing is we definitely have like certain elements we should be reusing. Like for example, the add wallet components that we have in both the dashboard and the app. Right, like you're connecting a wallet for the first time or connecting new wallets. We right now like don't share that. It's like different code, different styling. That obviously like really confuses the end user. And to be honest, like adding wallets is actually really complex because all wallets have like different backend implementations. Like it's a lot of code behind that. So
Right.
sharing this, yeah, I think would be nicest. Now, core feature wise, what I think would be really cool as well, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure like how much backend work this would be, is if actually you can kind of say like log in with my Union dashboard, and then we pull like perhaps previously registered wallets from your Union dashboard or something like that, right?
Yeah, it would be
Like
cool.
yeah, I feel like that could be an extremely cool feature because technically I've already added a whole bunch. So something in that direction would be ultra nice. Um,
So, um, one of the parts of this conversation that I find very interesting is obviously for the testnet 8 aesthetic, we really went for something like kind of like retro, cool, futuristic. Tucker, you had a beautiful description of it. What was it again? Like hackers taking off banking.
Well, that would be the kind of my intent for the new one, but the old one was like originally we used the UI UX of like the Alien movies,
Yeah,
and like retro like PCs, like terminals. It was like full on hacker, whereas now we need to pull back and be something that is a little more accessible,
yeah,
which we acknowledge was not the original intent of this first UI. This first UI was designed for like engineering type people, whereas now we need to kind of soften a lot of the edges all the way around. Um, but I would still like to retain some of that kind of grit a little bit,
yeah.
where we
No,
can, where it's not because I've gotten a lot of UIs from you guys, from Amir, Karel, Lucas. And one thing you'll notice across all of them is that they are all very similar, even
yeah.
in like colors, the line weight, the typography they use. So trying to find ways that we can look like those guys, but have like a little bit of kind of like extra interest, in our part. And that's going to be the hard balancing act, right?
Yeah, so
yes.
I think that like softening the edges when modernizing UIs is almost like something you can take literally because kind of what you notice is they all have like slightly more rounded corners, rounder, softer
Everyone
typography.
uses rounded corners,
Like
which is why I wanted to do edges in
yeah,
the beginning.
exactly.
I am fine doing rounded corners. I don't have an
Yeah.
issue with it. And the UI that I'm working in right now, for our UX has rounded corners. Uh, but
Yeah, so
I like the edged stuff.
of course I'm not the designer here, but just to kind of
Yeah.
like exemplify this and kind of show as an experiment, all I did to the current user interface is tweak
You're like
one.
showing like a mirror
Yeah,
of
yeah, I'll show it.
there.
In a bit, but like all I did to the current user interface is make
Mhm.
corners rounded, tweak contrast ratios, and pick a soft font. And if you do that, it goes from like here, classic 90s, etc. Literally, all I did was change corner radiuses, and it looks like
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
but for
looks like
modern.
everything else.
it looks like everything else now, which is kind of mental.
Everyone's
It's
Yeah,
following the same like two or three
yeah,
design languages, you know.
basically everyone does this type of a design, and again, it's just like slightly rounded corners, softer typography, and higher contrast ratios. That's
Yeah,
what.
so I don't want to change our typography. I think generally the type that we're using, we can utilize it in a different way. We have two really, really variable fonts
Yeah, this
that
one
can
is so
look
cool.
like all sorts of stuff, especially if we start using Supermalot more for UI elements instead of JetBrains. It'll feel more like the other guys. Everyone else is using like Railway and Open Sans.
Yeah.
Enter is really popular.
Yeah,
And we can look at those if you really, really want to lean into it. If we decide that that's a decision we make, where we can try and find a font there. But I think we can do it with the current type.
Yeah. Something. I'm going to just take off screen sharing core.
yes.
Do I have anything incriminating showing? I don't think so. Did you guys saw what was it? Which company guy was it again? The near guy who accidentally shared porn whilst live streaming codes.
Oh yeah, that
I
was
did
really
not know that.
Oh yeah, like it happened 4 days ago. Like they did the same session like this, but they were live streaming it, and he like switched to his screen, and then you just saw like a whole bunch of porn.
That's
Quiet for a
gooner
bit.
behavior. So
Obviously, everyone. I'm have a girlfriend and I'm engaged. So I do not watch porn. So although this is like very developer heavy, the
right.
example I want to make is what I really like with Superbase is like how at the start we have this as a tiny bar at the bottom, the top, but you kind of these like floating rounded elements, and it gives a really nice opportunity to show some like reactivity, and a nice way to either visualize data or something else that even though it feels interactive, right? Like you barely hover over it, but it immediately makes the app feel a lot more alive. And I think we have a lot of opportunities to have something like this in one of the pages or the main page itself to kind of highlight some of the data. And that fits in the brand, of course, right? Because Union is relatively developer heavy. I think it is nice that basically we have a fancy way of either showing how many transfers are ongoing, users, or for the user itself, personalized data. We have all of that in the API available. I think we should kind of make use of that. So that's one thing I think that Superbase does really well. How to make like feels really boring data immediately kind of interesting to look at in certain ways. Other things I've been collecting. This is the big jam. So Superbase really well creates these icons, which are not even clickable, to be honest. But it makes things feel like a certain category. They communicate this really well. And I think we can do that too. Either to communicate that something uses state lenses, for example, or perhaps we could show like this is from EVM to the Move ecosystem. Something like that.
Okay, so they're more like symbology than like icons. So we're using like a symbol to indicate that this is like a trustless bridge or something like
Oh,
that
you mean
versus
like
trusted, that kind of shit.
you mean like
Yeah,
badges, so not really buttons, but more like badges.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah, they're symbols that aren't clickable but indicate like this is an EVM bridge, this is a Cosmo bridge, like whatever we're using that
Yeah,
instead
because
of just
right now I feel like with the current app, obviously like we incorporated a bunch of user feedback in crunch time. But basically users told us I'm confused about how long it takes to do a transfer. And so we would a big piece of text saying a transfer takes 10 minutes, right? Or 5 minutes. Instead of using symbology more and perhaps like instead of the text saying it takes unexpectedly long, we can use orange coloring, right? Or have a specific symbol for that indicating like this is a outlier transaction. I think we can leverage that way more overall in the app.
totally.
One interesting thing is if you go to app.union that built in your sidebar, Karel,
Yes.
if you actually hover over if you can go to the transfers page. Sorry,
And
Explorer, then transfers.
Explorer
Yeah,
transfers.
if you hover over any token, so on the right, like
Yes.
so you have like a small badge in this pop-up, like on the top right corner, indicating what
Yeah,
kind of.
the ERC20.
So these kind of like badges you would like to see more of, but then with like iconography instead of text.
Yeah, I think there's just much more opportunity to do that. If I just the overall feel of our app is there's a lot of info for developers,
Yeah,
uh, quite a lot of text. So overall, it's like I think as a regular user, like hard to parse,
yeah,
and just a lot of reading instead of symbols that immediately tell me certain info.
Yeah,
So I don't know if I can
totally
find
agree.
all my articles. Yeah, like right, like this, just the first impression you get when you look at this, it's just a lot of text, right? Like 13, 8. Maybe we could have a symbol indicating like this is a channel and connection, and then like 18 tiny in that symbol generated, right? Like something like that would then immediately tell me, oh yeah, we're talking about channels here. And it would just make it less of a wall of text immediately at you.
Is that what those three? I've been trying to figure out. I
Yes,
didn't want
yes,
to
it's like
ask. The three numbers are
connection.
channels.
I really
Well, they
felt
got
like no
added
like
before.
regular user knows this. This is only Core, Lucas, and me that
Yeah, this is
realized.
good because I'm the guy that doesn't know what any of this is and was like building this UI. So the big thing that we're trying to do is hide some of this like really technical stuff, but it's still there because I think that's what separates us from a lot of other brands in this space is that we have a lot of that technical stuff available for people and we're very transparent about what we're doing. But
Exactly.
you show all of it at once, it gets extremely overwhelming. Uh,
Another thing, and I think this is like the cause of some like complaints about it being laggy. What we tend to do is, let me see if I can like, if you see it. So when I go for the first load here, you very briefly see the loading logo. Not sure if you guys even see that. And then suddenly like it folds out, but the space like isn't pre-allocated almost. Well, what Supabase does is this is on first load, right? There already is space for the total request, but they do the loader inside that space, and that just makes the whole page shift around a lot less. And then on
yeah.
top of that, when the data comes in, they'll make the data transition smoothly. I think our API is quite quickly, to be honest. So a lot of the time, our load time is like 200 milliseconds. But I think it's better if we actually make the load time 1.5 seconds and we choose to have some type of animation to smoothly fill the space itself. Even though like the data is already like in JavaScript and fully available, we still wait a little bit because a spinner that only does one click like just doesn't look good. Like it has to go, I don't know, for a
Yeah.
set amount of time for me to see the spinner itself.
Okay,
yeah.
so you guys have pretty much already answered my question as to which direction you're wanting to go, but it sounds like you want to do a tile-based UI system where everything is not most stuff is not laying flat on the screen. They are elevated onto individual components, and then those components load. Um, and then we can add loaders to those. I actually designed a UI for Invisalign that did loaders like that. We used a like a gradient, so it was like a gradient animation, so it would cycle the entire module, and then once the module loaded, right? But everything else would load at once. Okay, that's good because that's what I was
Yeah.
designing anyway.
And I think for all the data that we display, the type of data, like there are like smooth animations to do it, right? Like we show no bar charts, for example. Like you can really neatly like have those start at the bottom and then go up to certain amounts, right, in order. So you can do like little neat things with it.
Yeah, so one technical thing of note here is like the card animations usually work because they already know the size of the card beforehand. But if you're working with dynamic lists, very often you do not know the size. So for this, what I would propose is you kind of like take an average card height, and then you can onload animate the height of the card, depending on what it will be. But very often it's just unknown beforehand. Like you do not know how many
Well,
channels.
can't we lock the cards? So the what I'm working on right now with the grids is the cards are locked to a certain height and they have like the basic amount of information, like the minimum that you would need to understand what the card is trying to tell you. And then you can expand the card if you want more information. That's kind of the general design thing. So wouldn't the card always be the same size in that instance?
No, not for a list. For example, here, the size depends on how many channels exist.
Yeah, but for example, with the transfers, right, we decide to go with like live order at the bottom.
Yeah,
We can do that with the
transfers we
channels
can.
too. And I feel like with transfers, to be honest,
Yeah.
it's on the large side for my laptop at least. Like I need to scroll. We could have actually just decided to like, I don't know, put it off here. Then it would be fit without scrolling in the screen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much value it is that I can scroll like 30% more before I need to start clicking.
Yeah, so increasing the scale of those cells, so that you're not having to worry about that as much.
Yeah.
They have enough
Yeah, so
padding that you're not having to squeeze it.
yeah, and then for example, like just another case, like here, I think every single page we show like the same data, total transfers, total packets, metrics. So this, for example, could have actually been like on the lender portion of the Explorer, right? In like bigger blocks with like nicer way to visualize this. Total transfers could show indeed like how transfers fluctuate over time, total packets as well, how those are fluctuating over time. And because I don't need to see them when I navigate to connection channels again. And so then we can dedicate more space to it.
Another thing to note in general is if you can go back to the Skyhole. So there's basically two types of users. We have the type of users like our partners, like Azure. They're like doing like deep analysis, looking at packets, investigating data, looking at connections and channels. Like they want to see all of the details. They want full traces, etc. However, most users only really care about transfers, which is the first thing you see. So does it make sense to have like all of these items so prominently in a permanent sidebar, or should they kind of like be included in the header so that there's more screen real estate and you don't have a sidebar for most users?
I think it was
mm,
Amir who suggested maybe having a couple UI modes. This would be kind of similar to like you guys don't use Adobe as much as I do, but like for Premiere, Premiere has workspaces depending on if you are color grading versus editing
Yeah,
versus doing VFX, and it changes the layout so that it's more for what you're doing. So like the idea would be maybe you have like the normie side for like guys like me that is all
yeah,
about just doing transfers, all you need to know, and then there's a button for developers, and then it switches that home page to be more technical focused. That's obviously a little bit more work to design,
hmm,
but that would probably be the solution, the easy solution where you're not overloading or underloading certain users.
yeah, I definitely think we should have a like maybe three modes, even like regular, advanced, developer. Like regular shouldn't be displaying this. It shouldn't actually be displaying the chain ID either. I think, right?
Well,
Like
I would
shouldn't be doing.
argue it wouldn't even display channels at all.
Yeah, sure, but like in other elements, right? You're gonna like in the transfer, right? Like I go
That's
to this
true.
transfer overview. Regular would not show this at
No,
all.
I agree.
And advanced might show, I would maybe advanced also not even show the chain ID, but I would say regular also doesn't show these breadcrumbs from occurring.
No,
And instead, like only shows this like transfer in progress, basically. Advanced, you show the breadcrumbs. Developer, that's when you actually show data that you might want to copy paste to put in code, for example, right? It's like you're
yeah,
cross-referencing with your own database. And so you want to see what is actually behind this. Advanced is like I kind of like I read the docs and I think I understand what CK is. I find it neat to see what goes on under the hood, but I'm not actually working on this.
yeah,
Here, um I mentioned like our breadcrumb style is a bit inconsistent now, but I think like we could do like from top to bottom for advanced stuff, left to right for the regular style, to kind of show progression from occurring. So here, this could be like breadcrumbs too that fill up, but at least like make that more consistent. I do think that this is nice for advanced users to see all these steps.
yeah. So one thing to wonder is, yes, we can like indeed create multiple modes. So does it not make more sense to just by default hide all of the like breadcrumbs under a toggle, and then you can just click the toggle to see the breadcrumbs?
I mean, that's currently what I'm designing it around.
Yeah,
I think having multiple like different modes where maybe it auto defaults things being open or closed would probably
yeah,
be the easiest implementation. So right now I am just adapting what we have currently. I'm not making three different UIs because like I said, we're trying to get MVP first and then move from there.
Mhm.
But yeah, that
I
could be a toggle.
You
Yep.
could call this underlying section advanced, and in the settings, you could basically toggle that you always want advanced
Exactly.
section
Yeah,
to
exactly.
be
Yeah, that's what I'm
included.
thinking. Because
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
still have the discoverability of seeing all of these like powerful users for people who really need them. Because as a dev,
Yeah,
I will not go to the sidebar first thing to see, oh, maybe there's a different mode. There needs to be some discoverability to that.
yeah. Now, another thing I noticed, Superbase does as well, but layer 0 too. Like when you add a domain, or in this case, layer 0, what they'll do is they have this little green icon and actually like lights up a bit and dims again. So it has this like something's going on. Um, and we can use that to indicate like is a network healthy. So this transfer is currently ongoing,
Yeah.
right? If there was something going wrong with Sepolia or like a certain status, like if this was slowly blinking a bit yellowish, that would be an indicator kind of for me, like something is potentially going on here. If it's red, in that case, you could show in tiny text underneath, like Sepolia is experiencing XYZ with like a link, and you can click on that to see more. But that way, like it's a bit closer and easier to see like my item right now is doing good. We have the separate index status, of course, right? For
Well,
how is
what
our
we
index doing? But I think
what,
it could be closer to the thing I am looking at for how this is going.
well, one thing is, if you could please go to the previous page, to the transfers page. Um, okay, so yeah, here. So you see for Babylon, there's the small yellow icon. If you click Babylon.
Hmm.
So this being the 90s style, of course, we went like with this type of a symbol.
Yeah.
Uh, but the thing is, in a prior version, we actually had like a green check mark for any possible network that was healthy. But we found it to be a bit overwhelming to always show the user when things are going well. And like a bit of feedback I got is actually you should only inform users if things not are going well. Because what's the point of like marking every possible network as healthy? Like I only really want to know if things are going worse than expected.
Yeah, so this I'll just leave up to Tucker, like to figure out like is there a good balance where this looks good. The one thing is
Yeah.
like this does not look reactive to me. This seems hard coded. This actually, like the way this looks to a user, I think, is that we basically in the same text, like itself, pasted an emoticon, right? It does not like to me, it's
Yeah,
not a
you want
separate
it kind
sequence.
of reactive, like it's blinking or it feels
Yeah,
like it's above the
Yeah.
UI. Yeah.
exactly. It feels like it's in the
Right.
text box, right? So it's already not like real iconography or symbolism. So it's not that recognizable immediately, and has the same thing in the transfers. And do you see? Okay, we lost the Babylon ones. But here as well, like it was right next to the name, so you lose a bit of that
Right.
like immediate ability to scan for it,
Basically, all of
which
the
I thought,
alerts will probably fall under the same. We'll use the same system of iconography. So, like across anything, whether it's an alert for the actual system itself being down or versus a singular chain being slow or something like that, they'll use the same sort of indicators. They'll just be located around the place where you would find that information. So, like if it's for the entire system, right now I have the status for the whole system in the top right of the UI versus something within a transaction, it would be within the transaction module. But they'll use the
Mhm.
same sort of colors, so we're not,
Yeah,
you know, overloading people's brains.
yeah, this is like when we talked about this, for example, like Layer Zero does like little chain icons as well. They do that quite well. So that's one more thing that we could have a look to display stuff.
Yep.
Um, Then what I meant with like shared interface for how to add wallets, this is from Across. I think Across UI is quite nice, but definitely like normie UI. Like it doesn't have a lot of options. Across also has less features. So we kind of need our version. They rely on like a third party for this. But we probably build our own because we support more chains, more wallets.
How do you
But something
feel
like
about stuff like this where this is staged, where it only shows you stage one, like select the wallet, then stage two is like connecting the wallet versus having all of the stuff at the beginning, which is how we currently do it?
I like
Which
it
do you
staged.
prefer?
But I want to
Okay.
actually mention like really nice usage of breadcrumb as well, where like for regular users, it's always left to right. So the way we have it here, and this can be the same element as we do in the transfer progression, right? So we get users used to stages are this way. Um,
So
That at least I like that. And I think it's easier to grok for users. Also, because of the different wallets, we usually struggle with that some wallets have like one additional step over the other. So then in the like input box, we kind of need to deal with that. If you do it stage based, then you can potentially handle that because you know like oh, a user is doing, I don't know, Leap wallet. In that case, we need to like add one additional stage to the whole process.
yeah, so I think one really interesting question regarding wallet connections is there is this Ethereum improvement proposal that like provides an API by which the browser actually tells the app which wallets the user has installed. So currently, when you go to the app, it will show you a list of the Ethereum wallets that you have. However, you could argue that for discoverability of wallets, this is a bit worse because you will not see Ruby, for example, unless you have Ruby installed. That's the only way to make it show up in the app. However, I think there's like 50 wallets. So are you going to show like all 50 wallets always? Because that's also kind of overwhelming. So what's a nice balance between like only showing installs,
Like,
but
are you wanting it so
showing all?
that, like, let's say I don't have a MetaMask wallet, but it's
Yeah.
available to connect? Would clicking on MetaMask then take you to the where
Yeah.
you install MetaMask? That's the idea.
Yeah, yeah.
You could hide it in like a search bar, right? Like if there's a
Yeah,
specific wallet that you want to utilize.
or you can make the this. I'm gonna do some pretty awful art. But if you have like the right side of this, you could just do two little tabs with like I don't know at the top recommended, which can be like either we select from the browser or it's a subset and all. Right, and then you can toggle as a user between the two, and then instead of like showing talisman, right, on recommended, we don't show that. Like it's a trimmed version with only like 4 wallets that we recommend that you use. And we press on
Yeah.
all, it's technically all that feasibly by API we could support or auto detect.
I think I would still probably, depending on how many there are, I would then have that third section just be like a search icon and you click on that. And then if you're looking for a specific one, instead of having to scroll through a list. But yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, but
So
definitely like this mode, like the box on the left with text, like also allows you to add warnings. So if a user were to select one by like doing the search box and doing something that we've never even tested ourselves, you could do a little warning and say like this wallet was auto detected. I don't know,
Yeah.
use at your own risk.
Okay.
So one thing that would allow us to do here is if you go with a recommended approach, we can also recommend. Sorry, we can then also recommend wallet that supports multiple ecosystems. For example, OKX does both EVM and Cosmos and Move all in one. So then the user only needs to connect one wallet instead of 3, which is a big advantage, I think.
Yeah, yeah, fully agreed. So just this style, and just says a little on that, like this style is way more flexible, and we can make the decision graph like more complex depending on what
Yeah.
they select, where they're going. We can pre-fill it potentially, right? Like we can embed this on a site that is specific for like if you bridge into Move, and then you can actually filter and by wallets that at least support like what the user is doing in that action.
Oh, that
So
would be a good idea. Yeah, if it's context sensitive, so it knows what kind of transaction you're trying to do, so it'll select the best wallet to do that transaction.
yeah,
Would be pretty rad. Are you wanting to do this sort of staged thing for like transactions as well? Because right now I've only designed like a quick transfer where it's all in one module, but would you prefer that it's staged out where like step one, select what you're wanting to do and what chain, step two, what chain you're going to? Like, would you rather it look like that?
I think potentially
Well,
we could do kind of both, right? Because for
That's what I
power
was
users,
thinking.
we
It's like the main
transfers.
page would be the larger version of that, and then on the home page is like a quick transfer where it just
Yeah,
has so you're not
well,
having to go.
so
Okay.
I recall early in the testnet 8 design process, we had an idea of a homepage that just shows you all of the currencies you have for all connected wallets. I still personally
Yeah.
believe that makes the most sense to not show it like a dialogue, but like, oh, hey, let me just click this token I have here, and then
no,
you just click where to send it.
completely. Yeah, but the main complaint we have is like loads of data. People don't understand it. Displaying the tokens is hard to do because there's so many of them. What I like with if you do it also multi-step, let's say that this were instead like the for doing a transfer. You could use the left side that you have here to kind of show what you did in a previous step. So let's say the first step is selecting which chain to start and where you're going. The cool thing is like when we do like some type of campaign, we can have some data pre-filled. We can say like, hey, hop into um, I don't know, Monad and LP into Azure here. And then when you click on it, it shows this already pre-filled. And so we have like the, I don't know, Ethereum logo, Monad logo, a default amount that you're going to transfer that we could select. But on the left, it gives you a quick overview. Like this I've selected in the previous steps. And I think there's like nice potential here for projects building on top of Union to potentially reuse this too. Because they're going to run into exactly the same thing. They're going to say, oh shit, like we kind of want to support exactly the same set of wallets as the Union app supports, because that's what users might be using, right? The exact same amount of chains. So we might want to actually like be able to provide this widget for third parties to use. Um, so the multi-step process then something they can hijack. They can add an additional fourth step for what they are doing specifically. You can end the process like before you click submit. You can show if a user is going to earn extra achievements and XP. Right, so you can say like once you click submit, you will like transfer $100 to Monad, and you will earn 10 XP because you are going to complete this achievement. Um, those
Okay,
types of
so you wanted to have kind of like some gamification component also kind of built in
I
a
think
little
that
bit.
would be kind of nice. Like give a user that feedback and say like you are indeed as if they're like hooked into the dashboard, right? That's how potential.
Because I've got the profile page has. I'll show you guys this all in a second. We'll get there. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like all these like available wallets option, we could actually do like Union dashboard. You click on it. Now, like it loads the wallets from Union dashboard or the previous configuration that you've stored with that. And if they do that, then we show them the missions and XP should earn with this action.
Okay.
And could even tell them, right? Like instead of transferring 50 USD, transfer 100, and now you're eligible for this mission by Futon. Right. You can even
So
like import a bit.
one question here is, and perhaps this is more of a power user feature, but I really like bookmarking a transfer page where all of the settings are already pre-filled. Like imagine like I'm doing the same transfer. Would that just then immediately go to the last step in the stepper?
That's what I meant with like, let's say we have a certain campaign, like on the left, we show previous info. So we could already have pre-filled the start chain and end chain,
Yeah.
right? And so when you click on it, you get it partially pre-filled. And if we always have the same style, then it's really obvious for a user by looking on the left side, these are the pre-filled options I have. Like I see the Ethereum logo for chain, I see the Monad logo, so I know it's going from Ethereum to Monad. And if we reuse the same symbols as we do in the Explorer, right? So you build this understanding for users for like what are the icons for chains, what's the directionality, the type, like is it an asset transfer that I'm doing?
One further interesting question is, what would a user interface look like this look on mobile, where you don't really have the ability to do a split view?
You stack it, so that moves to the top, or it's a picture in picture. So you have a hovered box, and then you're scrolling above that box or behind that box, basically, as you stage. So it would be either I don't know how you're going to do that adaptively,
Yeah,
but that
I
would
mean,
be what it looks like.
we can kind of like do the stepper area on the top, but it cannot fill the entire screen of a phone because then you need to scroll to see what you're doing, and that's like really bad for like discoverability for users.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it would be a floating component. So like the breadcrumb thing is at the bottom, so you're going through the steps, and then as you hit like the next stage, if there is information, it expands a little bit, and you can just move that back down by clicking on it. But yeah, that's a design problem for me to figure out.
yeah. Um, Kyle, you are sharing your screen, by the way.
But alpha for the dashboard, guys.
Yeah, alpha for the dashboards.
Gotta love it.
Um, yeah. other stuff, like just gonna drop this here randomly because I thought this looked neat, but this is how a cross splits out, like what you get for LPing. In our case, I noticed us sometimes struggling with like how do we succinctly tell someone like a transfer time is 9 minutes. It's 8 minutes waiting for Ethereum finality and like 1 minute for what Union is doing, and then another 30 seconds. I thought the way they split it out here was quite nice because you're drawn to the big number, and then in small, we can basically start educating users about like finality, for example, right? Time to finality, proving time, like display
Probably
that.
do that in the bar as well. I'll show you guys in a second on that too.
Yeah. I mean, just doing this as inspiration, I thought it was like a little neat way.
Yeah, make sure you send this board to me, by the way.
Will do.
Also, yeah, just to come back to like the mobile thing I mentioned. Yeah, this will sound incredibly corporate, but I do think it will be a really good idea if we like design everything mobile first this time around, because last time we did quite struggle to like get everything down to the phone size. Like
now
laptop
now
size,
you're gaming because that's how I've done every other job that I've worked till
Yeah.
this one.
I'm
Where
sorry
you
to
guys
hear.
flip flop and do desktop first.
Yeah, I'm sorry it's boring to do mobile first. It's so fun to have
No,
like
I mean there's a
laptop.
reason that people design mobile first these days. It's because but last time you guys said that most people don't do this shit on their phones. You
Yeah,
said that.
Yeah, so that was actually a huge surprise for me. Personally, whenever I interacted with Web3.
Which I found to be surprising when you told me
Yeah,
that.
it is.
I was like, that sounds bullshit to me, but who knows?
No, but like it was actually surprising to me because the thing is, whenever I do crypto stuff, like I have my browser extensions, like I have all of these things I
Right.
do on my laptop, multiple wallets, etc. But when we looked at the stats, most users really were using mobile browsers with mobile crypto wallets, which truly caught me by surprise, to be honest. So yes, I think
The good thing that
it's
this design I'm doing is easy to convert to mobile. So otherwise I'd be on
yeah,
a couple hours of work.
yeah. So, I mean, I think this was also surprising to Kyle, by the way. Like, you also felt like, oh yeah, most crypto users just use their laptops, right?
This is unsurprising to the UX guy. Yeah, the UX guy is like everyone, it's like 80% is all mobile these days. Like giant apps.
Yeah,
Everything is mobile based. The
Yeah,
phones have
it's
gotten so
just like
crazy.
crypto UX usually is so terrible, right? That you do need four tabs and
yeah,
like a whole environment to do the most basic stuff. And so users being willing to do that in Kiwi browser over 20 tabs and go through that
yeah,
hell, like how do you participate? Also the amount of money they might be managing, right? On that little mobile phone. Um, yeah, no, this time we'll do like mobile first, but I think a lot of our stuff will fit in nicely mobile first too, to be honest. And if we get that right, like it'll be a blessing to use.
Yeah, I'll shift my focus to make these grids mobile first, and then we'll.
yeah. Sorry, Tucker.
No, it's okay. Like I said, I had a feeling. So
You go for
here, I can.
creativity.
If you let me share my screen, I'll show you kind of where I'm at right now, thinking wise, and we can kind of you can tell me how you're feeling. Let's do that screen. All right, I'm gonna move this over here. Okay, so generally, the reason that the grid is the way it is, what I did from our first grid, the grid that we used for testnet, was a 10 pixel grid. So this is a 20 pixel grid, so it's a little bit bigger. And the reason for that is it makes you a little more conscious of the space and what we're actually showing. And then I've also split it into basically an 8 quadrant grid from there. So what that lets us do is basically if we do this on mobile, each column is you basically just stack the columns and you scroll through it like that. And then you can have a quick menu at the top and bottom. So I'll adjust that stuff. So this is primarily based on both Infidex. It's also based on, like Layer Zero, some of their ideas, a lot of Supabase. There's a lot of really good UIs out there that have some things that we can use. So your menu here we'll use it out of the grid. I have it both in like this kind of fin-based thing, which would kind of use some of the iconography we're already doing. I really like that fin shape and it's unique. But if you want to do it in square, we can do it in squares. I don't care. basically at the top, you've got your profile and your rank for logging in, and your balance all lives here. This would also be if you want to do that, show all of your balances of all your tokens. This would be that double click from here, right? And you can have this expand out and show all of your balances, but it's hidden, right? That's the whole thing, is obfuscation this whole time. You've got your menu here. This was just stuff Amir suggested. This can be whatever you want. You have your home page, which is what we're showing here. Wallet, bridge swaps, analytics, staking, all that lives here. Bottom left quadrant is all of your settings, your support, what wallet address is currently connected, what is active in the program right now. If you swap to another wallet, that's what shows here. So the columns are split up basically by transfers, like the actual transfer component. Transfer progress is column 3, and then data is kind of the floating column right now. That can be whatever we want it to be, but really the stuff that I think people are going to come and use the homepage for is obviously to do bridging. This is the quick bridge component. It's pretty boilerplate. Token from, token to, the amount, button for maxing, the estimated value. This is your gas component here. And heard you guys wanted like potentially like 3 different things, one using intents. Whatever this ends up being, right? Clicking on one of these ideally would like fill up this whole box. Like you could do a cool animation. I was thinking like almost like a liquid animation, like it's like gas, right? Or like water.
Gross.
Would be really, really cool, right? And then, it shows what you do and you transfer. Nice and simple, right? Single page. For the actual transferring component, so like if you went to the bridge swaps page, we would expand this and stage it, right? So stage 1, you would do just this component. Stage 2, you would do just this component, right? You step it out. And then you can add more information because we're stepping it out like that. So that's like more for the power users. But if you know what you're doing already, or if you're brand new to this like I am, right, you just use this component. Then what it does is you go to your progress page here. And so all of the transactions you've done, you can see where they're at in these little cards, right? So this is like a scrolling page. So like this is the last transaction you just did. We have this bar here, and this bar would basically show like where it is in the stage like you're doing right now. But if you want to also split the bar into like, we're waiting on Ethereum, we're waiting on Union, we're waiting on whatever is wrong, the servers are down, like you could split this bar up into multiple colors. But you also have your activity here, so it just shows the last 3 things that are happening. So like, all right, this already completed, now you're waiting on this, and you're waiting on this. If you expand it, shows you the whole thing, right? Like we do now. When it completes, you can change the card color, right? All the stuff is green, good to go. And you can scroll through all your transactions right there. You don't have to go list and look for them. It shows them here for you, and that obviously would use like this profiling component and things like that. Then you just got your analytics and stuff here. I don't know what you want to show here. I'm just making shit up. Like this could be where we show those big things like total transfers, total packets. You can show that stuff here. I have it personalized for you. Like this is also places where you could do gamification components here. So like, oh, you've done 14 transfers, you're X close to getting XP on Union Dashboard. And then some sort of histogram or bar graph, so that we're adding a visual component to all of these. Also have an updates component here where we can just cross-post like blog things or updates about the actual UI that might be relevant. Like, oh, Babylon is now something you can interact with, something like that. But this would be like your core homepage. So this is what you land on. And like I said, it can either be this kind of thin design if we want to kind of go a little more unique with it, or we do like the rounded squares, something like that. In terms of the aesthetics, we're not there yet. Like I said, I played with some aesthetics doing like glassmorphic with like this kind of like textural, like water sort of thing that looks really, really cool and looks really neat, especially if we just go like deep water, super dark and black, and kind of lean into some more liquid like animations and things for everything would look really, really cool. But that is obviously we're floating right now, or we're not there yet. We'll go from here to like flat colors, and then we'll move into like some more of the kind of VFX sort of components of that. So I guess what do you think of the kind of grid so far?
So I have many thoughts. I think First of all, I think this is great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mhm.
Um, Also, I really like those concepts of like the glass stuff. It kind of reminds me of Vision OS. And despite the Apple Vision Pro not doing that well, Vision OS is very exciting to me from a design POV. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, the Apple-y sort of thing, which was the other thing that Amir wants it to be like Apple, and I hate Apple just being the one thing that everyone tries to design around. But you can do Apple's like components without making it look like Apple, right? So that's the
Yeah, no,
balance.
definitely. Um, so one thing I'm thinking is like basically for the transfer progress stuff.
Yeah.
Does it not make more sense to just have like one list of like, oh, here's all of the transfers you have done, and then within this list, we basically like show a status bar just below the transfers that they're still in progress. But if a transfer is not in progress, you just show like the transfer details, like, okay, here's what you do, and like you completed this, almost like a banking app,
Yeah,
where all the
so
comments are
you're
expanded.
totally correct. That sort of thing would be if you click on this up here. So if you click on that, it would change it to a more detailed list thing, right? Like it either takes you to a page or it converts this entire column into just a list, right? If that's, like I said, we're hiding stuff for, you're thinking like a power user still, I
Yeah,
think. Whereas I'm coming at this like a stupid dude that only needs to see like the last 1 or 2 transactions I did. Because most people aren't doing a ton, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think they're doing like 1 or 2 or 3, like occasionally. So they just care about the one thing that they're transferring.
yeah,
So
true.
you want to make that feel like we care about it, like it's special and not just in a list of a million transactions, right? Which is what it feels like right now on testnet. Is your
Yeah.
transaction one in a sea of 1,000 things happening, whereas we want to kind of personalize and hone in. All of these columns are going to be switchable, right? So
Yeah, makes sense.
we're looking at the normies side. If you switch to my analytics, it'll turn the whole page into a bunch of graphs and bars and whatever you want to show there. Same
Yeah.
with like quick bridging. If we want to go to like a larger bridging component, we go to bridge swaps here. We'll have a way to do it from here if you're like, I need more information.
It makes sense. Then also, one general question, like, what do the dots mean? Are they like placeholders?
All the dots are where icons will be. So they're
Ah,
just, yeah. So they won't look like dots. They will just be, there's an icon here or there's some sort of animation thing happening there. Like the status would be
yeah,
that glowing thing that he wants. This would be like like an exploding view sort of component here where it's going to blow this stuff up. Same with these. It's like I want more information on this specific module.
Yeah.
What those icons look like, I don't know. These obviously are like the favicons for the chains. These are icons. That's what all that stuff is. Yeah.
Makes
It's
sense.
just there as a grid component so I can see what sizes
Yeah,
need to
okay.
be.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. Then, and this I suppose is purely a matter of taste, but I think I prefer the non-fin cards, despite being a bit more standard. They just feel a bit more
Sure.
aligned in a grid, but that's just me. Very much a style thing. Also keen to hear what Karel thinks.
I think you can also do a combination. Like they don't all have to be fins. They could be like this quick bridge thing could be a fin because it's like special, and then everything else is like a box. Like you can pick and choose where you do it. But yeah, I totally fine if you want to do just boxes. I don't care.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of just like you kind of described. Cor and I are power users, so we always tend to like want big boxes with loads of data because we look at
Yeah,
backend dashboards and analytics dashboards all day, which contain even more data than we normally display.
Right.
So I kind of like it. I do think like because we previously discussed like maybe the multi-step for doing the transfer is nice. So how that fits in combined with the quick bridge, right? For which one we go. And I
Would you
think there's a need
prefer that
actually.
this is stepped, like the main touch point on the home page is a stepped transfer page versus because we can do this whole thing, but then it's like step 1, step 2, but that might get in the way a little bit at this size.
Yes, I'm not sure what better. If like quick bridge is basically just one big button, you press that, and then you get a hover in the middle that is stepped over the one we have right now, which is kind of like a lot of options immediately in your face.
Yeah, I think what would probably happen is like if this is the quick bridge thing, then you have another button here that is like the expanded view, and then this can expand to like 2 columns, and it does the stepped version, right? So you have like simplified and then expanded, and then it would also probably just auto switch you from the home page down to bridge swaps. If you're like, I need that. So this is like, there's 2 ways to get there. You have it through the navigation, and then if you're like, this doesn't feel like enough information to me, I click on this and it expands it, and you're now in bridge swaps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
So many of my remarks, I will admit, are like power use remarks. However, on the complete
Fine.
other side of the spectrum, whenever I see a card interface with like more than 2 columns, as a user, I
Mhm.
get kind of overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, help! There's so many cards. What do I do? Where do I
Sure.
like look? Where do I click?
Theoretically, you don't need this third column. So like
Yeah.
if we went and like hit all this, show you what that would look like. Doot, doot, doot. It's just like, actually, you know what? Easy. I'll just like go ahead and whoop,
Let's take some.
right? Then you just got that, right? And then the statuses would probably be there at the top so that we're completing our square, right? You want it to still feel like a square. But yeah, like you could do just 2. Like if that's all you think you need.
I mean, again, this is something we'd have to ask multiple people's opinions on. But to me, this already feels like, I feel calm. Like, okay, it's fine. Now I just
Or
see the
what's really cool is you add a plus icon here, and then they can make this third column if they want. If you're like, I'm a power user, I need more information, and then you can add like a module if you really wanted to go crazy.
Yeah, I feel like this could tie into with this thing like is a user a regular user, advanced, or developer. Like if you have developer enabled, just by default,
It
there's
gives
a
you that
person
third
with
column.
additional widgets. Yeah, so not only each like block has more info, but also there's just additional blocks there for you to potentially observe. And if you're a regular user, maybe all we display is your last like 3 transfers and the quick bridge one, and just
Yeah,
nothing
like
else.
if this is our standard, right? And then this is like your kind of your more developer-y thing. Like maybe this is defaulted to not quick bridge, but it's defaulted to the larger like staged
Yeah.
bridging. Like, yeah, totally.
And then you can
This
use the
is like the
space more
list.
too, right? Like the 2 columns become wider potentially.
Yeah, so
More.
like in the developer one, this would expand to like 2. Here, let me copy this so you can kind of see what I'm thinking. Like this expands to like 2 columns, and then this, the transfers moves over to here, and becomes the list instead of these like little module things, right? Because you just want to see the list of things. I think that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Easy to do as well.
No, shoot.
So
Guys,
one more idea I had is
Yeah.
yes, and this again will sound quite cliche. But one thing I really like about ChatGPT's interface
Oh,
is
so I can
like
what
you see
you're-
my screen?
yes.
Like when I go here, I just feel a sense of calm because there's like zero distractions. It's just like, oh, I want to like ask a question and I'll get a response. And I was thinking like, what if our app's homepage is just like the multi-stepped transfer flow that you mentioned before, Karel? And it just shows this like big stepper in the sort of the screen, like, okay, here's how you make a transfer. And we just have this arrow like, oh, scroll to see your cards, or maybe the cards already pop out a bit here. And then if you want to see more details, you just scroll down and then you see the dashboard and like the multi-column UI Tucker designed, for
Yeah,
example.
or to tiny link, you could have bridge.union.build be just the stepper, right? Like
And
the
really,
your easy to use floater in the middle,
yeah.
and that's it. And app.union.build is that reused, but then also like your last transfers that you can scroll through with the sidebar.
Yeah,
And
I like the chat GPT. I like this setup. I think what I would have maybe an issue with is that it might be too much of a pivot from what you currently have. It's like going from like ultra data heavy to like wildly minimalist. And I think that that is almost antithetical to what our brand is right now. Whereas we are a little more technical heavy. So you want a little bit of that. Like you don't want to go completely the opposite direction and you're like, Apple, everything is shaved off the edges, and it's just like you feel like you're hiding too much. Um,
Mhm.
I think it can be that stepper at the beginning of like you just want the stepper to be the only thing that you see on the homepage. That's cool. I wouldn't go like so crazy as it's like you feel like you're hiding all this stuff.
Yeah, we can experiment with it as well once we have the step completed, right? Like if we want like the minimalist version, probably we build the full version first, and then we can extract the
Yeah,
elements
so
we
I
want.
guess my question is what components at the core right now do you want me to be focusing on? So I've got like a grid generally for like what a homepage looks like. Clearly the wallet is important, so I can put that as a focus, and so is the stepper. Those are like the two, I think, big ones
Yeah,
I've
and
heard
I,
so
and I
far.
suppose the list of transfers is very simple. Like you submit transfers, you view transfers. Like those are the two core functionalities.
Okay, so like what I am using is like those little tiles right now, what that is, the transfer, like what is in flight.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I will not focus too much on like showing all of the details. For example, like the stepper, because currently in the UI we're changing it to just be like a small loading bar. So I do not think that like one transfer wants to have like a full square card.
Like if it was just the bar.
Just a bar. Yeah, that's like from our like the thing is I really like steppers. I really like seeing this sense of progress. But some feedback that we are getting is that users find it a bit overwhelming.
I know way back I suggested the Domino's pizza tracker as a
Yeah,
way to
yeah,
just show its peak. It's so well
yeah,
designed and it's fake. It's completely bullshit, but it gives you
yeah.
this feeling that things are happening. So yeah, I am totally fine completely removing the breadcrumb if you want. I
It's all
like
about,
kind of like that it's if it's expanded, it shows it to you. Like I feel like why not? But
yeah. Well, they are very useful to developers though. So it's a difficult balance to strike, where we
I think
show it.
it's like defaulting like so if I make the default actually smaller than what it is now. So the default is just here's the transfer, the number, and where it is on the bar on your little pizza tracker. And then that's it. And then the expanded is the 3, right? And then maybe developers get like the whole kit and caboodle, right? I think
Yeah.
that's okay.
And can you show the Figmas again?
Yeah. I have completely lost what screen you guys are on. There we go. Oop. Yeah,
So
so
if
this
you,
would be like just that.
yes, yeah, I
Right.
think
And then
this,
the expanded is like this, right? So this is actually expanded.
yeah. And then the thing is, because it's so tiny, again, maybe this is too power user of me, but to me, like just showing a simple list of previous transfers below the one you are currently doing would make a lot of sense to me.
I would show maybe like the last like 2 like
Yeah, for
this.
example.
And then yeah, if you want to do like oh my god, like a list below that. So like if we're looking at our 8 grid, the 2 live in this top quadrant and then the list is in this bottom quadrant.
So why, on the one hand, yes, but on the other hand, why does it need to be like quadranted? Why can it not be just 2 columns? What's the advantage of having the quadrants if we do 2 columns instead of 3 columns? I mean, if you have 3, it makes sense for visual alignment.
What do you mean like you want the list in the 3rd column?
No, what I mean is, I think the list can be like immediately below a tracker. It does not need to be in a quadrant below.
Okay, this is just design principles. Like generally people want things in grids and actually will consciously understand if something is breaking a grid if everything is following that component style.
Yeah,
So if I have a list that's like crossing over these 2 grids, and it's not like a movable component, it'll feel weird.
okay.
So this is part of design is understanding grid systems. That's actually probably most of it, and then the second part is understanding when you're allowed to break that grid, right? So I break the grid here, but I'm allowed to break the grid here because these stack up on the other side of the grid. So the grid is still defined. It's complicated. It's what I went to school for.
Makes sense. No, okay,
Yeah.
it makes sense. But one thing I really like about this design is how all of the navigation is just unified into a sidebar. I think currently we have the navigation split between a top bar and a sidebar.
Yeah, that was another big
But-
thing. And this actually wouldn't be exploded like this. Like normally it would be kind of like how Supabase has just these
Yeah.
icons here, right? So you're actually it'll feel even less like crazy. It'll literally feel like just this, right? And then these are all
Yeah,
gone.
I like that.
And I think that'll look really, really nice. This is nice. This will feel nice and centered at that point instead of
Yeah.
left heavy, which it feels like when this is open.
Yeah, and also if it's collapsed by default, then the
You
like
could also collapse this too. Like this can spring
Yeah.
in and out. So it's just showing like your profile picture like is over here on the left side, and then clicking on it, this little bar like shoots out
Yeah.
and locks to your like second grid.
So in this like I really like the idea of having like just one sidebar that contains all of the pages, and then so the thing is, Explorer has multiple pages, right? For example, you have like the channels, you have the connections, etc.
Right.
Does it make sense to have like subsections in a sidebar? Almost
Yeah,
like
so that I actually put a note here, like in this scenario, like you either want to go left to right or top to bottom, right? But the entire system needs to adhere to that rule. If stuff is going to stack like this, or if it's going to stack like this. So we're going to stack top to bottom, so point sub point like this. So like here I have home is like the thing you're on. This would like if there's something underneath it, we would have obviously a little caret and it would show
yeah.
like that. But yeah, you just stack it. It's pretty effective. And you could actually have if like people start getting confused, you can put like a like home file browser thing up here that's like home
That's
wallet,
gross.
like wallet explorer, whatever you need can live up here if people are getting lost, and then you can click back if you need to.
Mhm.
Easy component to add. So I guess the only other question I have is I'm gonna run out of grid things to do, and I'm gonna have to eventually start fucking with style, right?
Yeah, aesthetics.
So everything you guys have linked has been flat colors. So are you leaning more towards just flat without like any
So,
textural like things like that? Glass morphic.
so the struggle I have is it's feeling to me it kind of feels like all of design is kind of like converging to one aesthetic nowadays,
Welcome to
which
my
is
life.
which is boring. But I feel like users kind of like the boringness of it because it just gets some shit done very easily.
I think there's a balance, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, our system is very fast. So as long as the system is working pretty fast, you're allowed to do more interesting things. Um, I think it's if our system was slow and it also looked really fancy, people would blame the UI on being that's why it's
yeah,
slow. It's like it takes forever for all these animations to load and do things like that.
true.
You also have to know when animations are appropriate. One thing that's happened a lot is overuse of animations. Like every single thing has like a little dumb thing it has to do. I'm gonna blame Duolingo on this. Duolingo uh like went overboard on every single component, like has the little owl doing a dance or the buttons all like jump and bounce and things like that, and it slows the entire UX down.
Yeah,
So like things like the quick bridge should have very few animations. If you do something like you click on this and it does the thing, it's like instant. Like, but it
yeah,
does have those little delight moments, those little
yeah, yeah.
designs.
I do really like those. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's not like the entire thing. Like I click on a thing and you have to wait for like the tiles to all whoosh and do it shit like that. Should be really really fast, like sub half a second
yeah.
little things.
So
But
I also
aside
really
from
wonder what Karel and Robert think here, um, like aesthetics and design wise.
I'm gonna be honest, I like flat colors, I like dark colors. Um, I think it's quite
figured.
sleek. I kind of like users entrust us with money, right? So to be honest, like being similar to other applications that they really trust is good, right? Like being similar to Revolut, InfiniX, Layer Zero has an advantage because you're putting your little money in this. So if it gets too wonky, then it becomes a bit scary, of course. So I think
Yeah.
that's my main opinion at the moment. I do like the idea of potentially down the road, like doing really wildly styled UIs with the same bridge stepper for specific chains. So bear chain.union.build, where then you go crazy with like styling for that to just make it fun. But for the main one, I kind of like just flat colors.
Okay. What if, and this is gonna be my one plea, is like adding a little bit of like texture to this stuff. So it'll be flat. We won't do like glass, things like that, but we'll add a little bit of like, it's not completely flat. It'd be like adding like a little bit of probably like noise or grain to like the actual things that they lay on, but not to the point it'll be really, really subtle. So this would be kind of like oh my God, what's a good Spotify tends to do a little bit of this. Like their UI is generally flat, but they have some kind of gradient, sort of like textural gradients. That's kind of what they use.
I like those kind of things personally.
Obviously, this will be easier if I just show you what it looks like eventually. So I will do a call. I'll do basically I'll modify this grid with your guys' inputs so that we're like, all right, this is kind of the design direction, and then I will dress it up in a bunch of different ways, and you guys can just pick which one you like. One of them being super base, layer 0, gray, whatever, and then we'll move up the chain to like more crazy.
Yeah. And then
and figure out what you guys like. I also got to figure out like the icons. Like that's a whole design challenge. Just figuring out what icons we want to go with. We'll do new icons.
So the thing is, the very like angled aesthetic that we have, like the very tight corners, where there's no corner radii, we can still preserve a bit of that identity in our iconography, perhaps. Where the
Theoretically, you could also do this whole UI with not round corners if you went like crazy edged.
The thing I like now, I do think people like the round, like corners to be a bit round, because like straight corners make them feel like, oh, it's
You could
inhuman.
put a CRT effect over it and do like one big block in the middle.
So
Dude, when we like warp it so it's like a CRT mod, this like that GTFO UI that I wanted to do. No, I think we'll drop the CRT stuff. I think that was more polarizing than I was expecting it. People hate fun.
People hate fun. That's the thing with design. People hate fun, and I love fun.
Yeah, people hate fun. I fight it all the time. We're lucky we even did it to begin with.
So the thing is, with the cards, what's this corner radius?
These are 20. The interiors are 10.
So I personally like, again, fair opinions. I also want to hear Kyle Roberts. But I really like cards with like very subtle corners, like 4 pixels maybe.
Oh, like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty edged. We could actually do like we do like subtle fins, like where it's like a 4, and then the fin is like a 10, like it's like barely. I'm trying to get the fins. I'm on that fin game. No, we can do 4. That's fine.
They're like 4. What does 8 look like? Like 4 or 8 px corners, like very subtle. That's what because to me this like
more subtle than.
The thing is, the most confident feeling cards have like straight edges to me, but like the tiny randomness gives it something like, okay, this will not like cut me if I try to hold this card.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can make the corners harder than they are currently, but not so hard that they're going to cut core.
This is absurd. But
again, my job.
Very subjective thing, so I really want to hear like Kyle Roberts' opinion on like corner radius.
I think, but now they're a bit too sharp still at the top.
All right. So somewhere, all right, probably like 10.
Yeah.
Like 10 is slightly more than Core likes, but not so round that it's crazy.
Yeah, but we'll need to see. To be honest, if we connect this to like dashboard data, we have people's Twitter users. We can just observe who is really angry with the classic UI and dislikes fun. And in that case, we do like tiny corners. And if we know that they enjoyed the classic UI, we just do full-on fins for those users.
Yeah, fins, baby.
Dynamically generate fins or not.
Since this will be live and you're going to share this with people, vote in the comments that you actually want fins the whole time, and that it's actually
No, I think
you love hard edge. You actually really like the CRT effect, and you should want to see the CRT effect come back.
Um,
I think we were pretty clear, like idea-wise, like relay to you, Tucker, like what direction we
Yeah, I
want
think
with.
I have enough to design. So I will. So wallet, stepper, transfers, and colors. Figure out what that looks like. And I think that's enough for you guys to move on. And then obviously I need to change the typography here to use our typography or an adjustment of that.
yeah.
Obviously,
So
I'm going to probably add a few colors to the palette. I like our colors currently are great. I was using them earlier, like the core ones, but I might need to add some other indicator colors or
I think we
shades.
should go more contrasty, a bit more contrasty.
Finally, my boy is coming around.
Here, there's a really important distinction. Like, I really like
Okay.
big contrast between like text and backgrounds. I think that's
Yep.
nice. However, one thing that if you want to drop the retro aesthetic and go a bit more modern feeling, we can no longer do contrasted borders. Like that just immediately makes users feel like, oh, if there's like a black background and the border is pure white, people go like, oh, like shit, like
I think
it's
it depends on how you're using it, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I tend to love I'm big on high contrast. But
uh,
we will do a more contrasted version of this. Obviously, this is not to
yeah.
what I'm intending to do. It'll be something different in terms of how the layering works.
So
But yeah,
here's the thing. I again, I really like personally like our testnet UI with like the big contrast and the all caps buttons and the like. I really like that, but I think people don't associate really high contrast borders with modern design because all modern designs have really subtle and boring contrasts.
I think it depends on the industry. I think like obviously in this design I did not use all caps almost anywhere. I understand that we need to look a little more professional, and that's not what most fintech apps use. But like if you I draw most of our inspiration from like game UIs and gamification, and that's
Oh,
where
and
you
they're
really
all
see
contrasty, all of them. Yes,
hella contrasty, lots of crazy
all of them.
shapes.
Yeah,
That's where all the innovation is, in my opinion, in UI design is over in gaming. Like if you look at like the UI for like Persona,
uh,
or
yeah, games
or
have
you can
so
look
good
at bad
UIs.
examples like Civ 7's awful new UI that is the worst thing I've ever seen. Like I watched a 30-minute video the other day about obfuscation, and Civ 7 just absolutely dropping the ball on that. It's good. They're good like case examples of like how you can completely just like drop the
Oh
ball.
man, I haven't had the time to play Civ 7 yet, but now I'm really curious what their UI looks like.
It's I've watched I think two now deep dive videos from two different YouTubers and a UI UX guy talking about like going from Civ 6 where everything is really obvious, like what resources which tiles are getting, to now
Yeah,
like it's all hidden under like sub menus. And so now you can't like manage things at scale. Also, the colors, like the buildings were like color coded in 6, and now in
yeah.
7 they're all like
Oh
they try to
no,
look more realistic, but now you can't tell what a building is. Um,
wow, that's
that's where
crazy.
stuff has ramifications, right? And you don't think about it.
Yeah, I also noticed that Civ 7 will have a virtual reality release with an entire different UI. So I
Oh yeah,
also
I saw
love to
that.
see them roast that UI.
I think it's because they did VR, they simplified everything. Like this game, clearly the design goal was to simplify, which is the same design goal we have, is to simplify what we have. But this is like the the warning, right? Is you oversimplify, you can actually completely screw over your audience, right? That
Yeah,
is some of that tactility, right? And we have that expectation from our users as being more tech forward, so we don't want to completely lose all of that. We want
yeah, agreed.
so yeah, it's a balance. But
One
okay,
more,
yeah, I think I have enough on my end to be able to roll with it.
one small detail when I made like this like meme version of just making things rounded and boring.
Mhm.
Um, I did add this off-the-shelf component, and I must say, like, I do really like subtle effects like these. Like, note what happens when it updates. I'm not sure if you see it on camera. Um,
What am I looking at?
oh, do you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay,
What am
look at
I?
the. Oh, maybe it doesn't show up because it's too fast for Gather.
Oh,
No, we
like
see it.
the rotating, like it's on
Yeah,
a cryptex or something. Yeah,
this
that
I
looks
think,
great.
I think this looks very very cool.
Yeah, and I think you can do that for entire like the scrolling. You can have it like gradient in and out on the ends. So like you're scrolling through an entire like column field. You can do stuff like that. That's like little. Again, I've linked this website 1,000 times. I'll link it one more time. It's called
Yeah.
Design Spells. I
The small
absolutely
things
adore it.
are amazing. I like them.
Where is it? Yeah, this. I draw a lot of inspiration from Redesign Spells. So do you see anything on here that is like really cool that you're like, we can do that? Again, I want to lean into, if I had like aside from the flat colors in terms of animations, I want to do like liquidy style animations. That way we're kind of leaning into our kind of oceany like aesthetics that we have going with the rest of our branding, but it's not like whale shark overt. It's just like deep ocean, kind of the depths.
And liquids feel smooth.
Yeah, to look, it feel anytime a UI does like a liquidy sort of like, it's always my favorite. It's always so cool.
Very cool.
Apple actually has quite a bit of design elements that do some components of that. Like even like their dynamic island has some.
The dynamic island's my favorite feature. Like it's so beautifully designed. It's
Yeah.
very, very well made.
And yeah, it bounces and things like that. I don't want to do bouncing. Bouncing kind of it's getting in the way of the user. But yeah, like you can do some shit. Okay, cool. Well, if you think of anything else, let me know. This is gonna take a day or two at least. I'm gonna probably have to tell everyone to halt any of the other marketing. I'll kick that over to Brittany because this takes forever to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about it while it's recording, but like your time frames of when you're wanting some of this stuff, because we are next week. I'm going to be in Denver, and I won't be able to really work on this stuff because I got to do videography for Denver.
Yeah, maybe thank you, audience, if anyone was watching. Hope you enjoyed this design session.
Thanks, community. Let us know what you think. I think Cooker needs, when we have like the first few items iterated on, I think it might be nice to like post each like individual item on Twitter, see what people think about it. Maybe they prove us wrong. And resoundingly, you're gonna get 3K likes on the fins.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to win on the fins. I understand. I understand that it's a losing battle, but I can probably get, if I am passionate about it, someone will come to my aid.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Can we cut the recording?
Yes.
Okay. Cheers.